First of all, welcome to the launch of Going for Gold. It's good to see so many of you here today. Before I talk about Going for Gold and teaching and learning, let me just put it into context of our university and how special this university is. So when we look at our profile, and I know many of you have heard me say this before, but let's just remind ourselves of the profile of the university. So when we look at our student profile, we've got over 90% of our students are from state schools. We've got over 60% of our students are BAME. We've got 42% of our students are first in their family to go to university. 27% of our students come from families where the taxable income is less than £10,000 a year. We're on 5 campuses in London and we're represented from 162 nationalities through our students and our staff. And I say, where else can you meet so many people from different backgrounds, different traditions and different cultures? But diversity isn't just for the sake of diversity. When you think about the diversity of this university, it's the diversity of thoughts, it's the diversity of ideas. It's all people coming from different backgrounds, different traditions, different cultures, coming together with different ideas, different views. And when those ideas and views clash, we come up with different ways of thinking, different ways of addressing the grand challenges and looking at what we previously thought was the unthinkable can actually be solved. And that's what diversity is all about at this university. But you take that with our student population, you put that alongside our research, you look at the quality of our research, when you look at the citations of some of our outputs that are coming out of this university, we're in the top 40 in the world. And in medicine, we're in the top 4 in the world. When you go back to the last breath assessment exercise, we were actually 5th in the country on the quality of our outputs. But it's not just about outputs, it's the difference that we're making to health and well-being, shaping society going forward, driving the economy, but actually making an impact in our research, but also in our education. And then of course you put that alongside our profile of engagement and public engagement. We're embedded into the local community. We're actually helping on national policy. We're helping in the region in London, but across the UK as well. And internationally, we've got links all over the world. We've got 4,000 students in China, we've got a campus in Malta, in Paris, and links, as I say, to all universities and institutions across the world. Now you put those 3 profiles together, and you won't find a university like it. And that's what makes us so unique. And the pride that we've got of working at this university, it goes through everyone that is in contact with this university, all our staff and all our students. Now when we come to the education side of it, and education and research goes hand in hand, it's parity of esteem. The research feeds into our education. And when we look at the education and the Going for Gold concept, when I first came to this university, I thought that I could see the passion that we had here for teaching and learning. I thought that perhaps some of the things we'd lost our way on. So when I asked Professor Stephanie Marshall, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, to join us in June, I asked her first of all to actually go out and talk to a lot of people right across the university. And she says, I can see the passion. Everyone's passionate about teaching and learning. Everyone's passionate about the difference that we're making at this university, the difference to people's lives that come through this university. And she could pick that up straight away. And she come back and she said, I can see that, and I can see the passion and the ambition right across the university. And that's where then we came up with the strategy of Going for Gold. Because everyone said, we can see where the Teaching Excellence Framework is going. We can see the way that people view us from external, but we're better than that. And actually, we've got a silver at the moment, but we're not happy with the silver. We want a gold. And when we look at the basic metrics that underpin that Teaching Excellence Framework, they're metrics that are important to us. The metrics of retention, the metrics of employability, the metrics of the NSS and what students are saying to us. But also the issue about co-creation. It's actually, we are a university. It's not about students, it's not about staff, it's about all of us working together. And that was very important, and that's something that Stephanie saw straight away, and she came back to me and said, I think that this is what we should put together and look at the basics of teaching and learning, really harness the passion that everyone's got about teaching and learning, and drive it forward on Going for Gold. Now, I've said too much. My introduction should have been a minute. I think I've gone over that. So now I am going to introduce Professor Stephanie Marshall to tell you a bit more about Going for Gold strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colin. Thank you so much for a brilliant introduction. And I think it is very much against that backdrop of we are such an amazing university, are we not? However, does everybody know it? If not, they should know it, and they soon will, or at least they will when we get that gold, and that's why we've got to nail that gold in the next step. But I just want to rewind a bit to when I arrived in June, and it'll give you a bit of a sense of the provenance of Going for Gold. And there are a number in this room who have been absolutely instrumental in helping shape this project, because people have been so passionate. And I have to say, some of the people who were most passionate about it, who are also in this room, were the sabbatical officers, and I'll go into that in a bit of detail in just a moment. When I arrived, and as Colin said, the view was I needed to talk to people, and as one would anyway. And so, as I was talking to people, I thought, actually, you know what? Looking at what's said about Queen Mary, and I'll come back to that in a minute, in the press, by the various league tables, etc., and the reality, and you just think, what's going on here? There seems to be a huge mismatch. So I sought to work out what the issue was. And do you know what the biggest issue was? The student voice wasn't being listened to. And you could almost track year on year where students have been asking for certain basics even and not getting them. And I thought, for whatever reason, there was that disjuncture that made us then just probably this diagram that hopefully you've all seen, or if not, you'll be seeing a lot more of in the future, and it's certainly at the centre. And I just thought, actually, it's all about co-creation. That's what we've got to do now. And going around every single school, talking to the leadership teams there, a range of other groupings within PSS, continually having the discussions as well, either with the SU and the sabbatical officers, or primarily having a sabbatical officer with me when I went to these various meetings. Time and time again, you could tell no one was happy that we got that silver in the test. They were kind of relieved that we hadn't done work, I have to say. But they did not want to be bobbing along on a silver, running the risk of a bronze, or even just thinking, we'll just aim for another silver, shall we? It won't be so challenging. To a person, everybody was keen to say, let's raise our ambition. We're passionate about teaching. We want to get the gold. So then the question was, right, so how do we do that? And how we do that then is resulted in this, and I'll go into this in a moment. Now, in terms of looking at what evidence did we have that the student voice was the issue, I think go back to what any good historian would do. And as a historian, I think this is my roots, basic stuff that hopefully all of you would do, irrespective of your disciplinary background. What does the evidence suggest in terms of the way we're moving forward? And the evidence suggested that things were going wrong. Certainly our retention was an issue. You just looked at the figures. Something was going wrong. Why weren't students listened to? If you looked at our NSS scores, the trajectory was down. So what was going wrong there? Are we asking the students what we could do better? Employability, which has gone up slightly, but not where we want it yet. Certainly, once again, issues there. So what are we doing about these different things? And so I then started posing the questions, what do we know about retention? Oh, it's probably commuter students who are the ones who are dropping out. Why aren't we asking commuter students what it is that we could do more for them? And so on, those sorts of questions, which was when, as we were starting to think about the Going for Gold strategy, which was 3 months of consultation to get there, we thought, actually, why aren't we using students as researchers? We're recruiting exceptionally bright students by getting interns in. We could get students exploring some of these issues for us and making recommendations. So in that process, and I hope all of you feel that somehow Going for Gold has already touched you, this strategy, which really typifies the ambition now that will then also then fold into our 2030 education strategy. We got that sense of there's 4 key areas we need to work on, and then we'll work on the details of those. Number 1 area, we know we need excellence in education. That was across the board, no disagreement there. Some of the basics in that that excellence in education were some of the basics in terms of teaching skills, which I'll come back to. Secondly, we thought we needed excellence in student engagement. And also, if you look at many of the research studies on what makes for effective retention, the number 1 factor is excellent student engagement. So how do we get the students really engaged and passionate and working and co-creating with staff? Third one, excellence in student employability. And an issue in many universities, we know certain things that work, but also it takes a really concerted strategic approach, so let's look at what we might do differently there. And then fourthly, excellence in the learning environment, when repeatedly certain of the basics that the Students' Union have been asking for the whole of your undergraduate years, I guess you've been asking for, the sabbatical officers, and suddenly saying if we could only nail, and I mean, you're probably so sick of me telling the lockers story, but you know, for 3 years as an undergraduate, I've been asking about why there couldn't be lockers. Interestingly, that was replicated with some of the academic schools as well, saying one of the biggest problems our students have is they can't bear lugging about a massive rucksack full of books. You think in this modern era that they need books? Of course they need books. We like books, don't we? Complemented, of course, by technology. So, not rocket science. We came into this building, checked out the lockers in here for a start, and lo and behold, keys have been lost, so they couldn't be issued. We've got new lockers. And it went on like that. And I hope that first-year students coming in appreciate the huge amount of work the sabbatical officers undertook in the summer in terms of saying, taking me around, looking at space, looking at the space that we needed to make kind of social space where they could sit, just signage, all sorts, I'll go on there. But back to then, what is this strategy here? The strategy went through many iterations to come up with the 4 pillars and 4 work strands under each of those pillars. If I just give a quick summary of those, and I know a number of seen me present on this before, but I just want you to get a real sense of where you might fit in, because obviously 4x4, 16, and some people will quickly reckon that and say, how can we be doing something different across 16 areas of our working day? That's not the idea at all. These 16 work strands are work strands that have been asked for by different parts of the university, saying this one innovation or this one particular thing would really help us raise our performance in terms of serving our students well. So as I've gone around as well, I've said to schools, if they could just work out kind of 3 areas, or even 1 per pillar, where if they got engaged in that, it would make a major difference in terms of student learning outcomes, then please encouraging you to do so. So when we're looking at if we're looking at, excellence in education, the greeny bit, there are a number of things there that are really to do with skilling up your staff in terms of thinking about HEA fellowship. And I understand there used to be a target at the university many years ago, but it kind of fell into abeyance. We're offering much more support now, right down at the local level as well, for people who want associate fellowship, particularly if you're thinking about your teaching assistants, right through to professoriate staff, where they can have one-on-one if needs be. Right through to thinking about academic advising, etc. So the basic toolkit that anybody who's involved in teaching and assessing should actually have to at least threshold standards. But I keep saying, threshold standards is the minimum. We want to exceed threshold standards. We should be passionate about exceeding threshold standards, and we can exceed threshold threshold standards. And we've got plenty of staff in here who've already done that and demonstrated through having senior fellowships or principal fellowships or national teaching fellowships. So moving beyond looking at excellence in education, our number 2 pillar, student engagement, once again involved in a number of things in terms of thinking about how do we really put ourselves in the shoes of the learner. And I've encouraged schools to really think hard about put yourself in the shoes of the learner. Are you speaking in a language that they can understand for a start? Because sometimes it can be confusing. Some of the documents that I've read as well, in terms of certain procedures that you need to go through, and you think, gosh, if I'm finding that really, really difficult to understand, what are students thinking when they read this? Is it really accessible? So that's a particular area. Then going through to looking at the third pillar, the student employability. Well, I think you'll probably be familiar with a lot of the work that Careers and well, the second term of career enterprise, you know, thinking of all the great work that's gone on there, but what we found as we were going around having the discussions was too few students were benefiting, or it was a particular type of student that you would expect would benefit anyway, particularly if they were bringing home and there was their mother, like I did with my kids. Have you been into Careers to find out what's on offer? Well, no, Mum, don't boss me around. But you know, some kids actually have that all the time. Okay, I'm first generation university, but nevertheless I thought this is what I missed out on, so I'm going to make sure my kids do what I never was able to do, so I didn't have parents like that. So this area we're working on, but then I think that one thing that I'd really like to highlight is use of the Higher Education Achievement Record, which has been an offer in a voluntary nature here, but not offered to each and every student. And we've got the e-learning unit working on that now so that it's easily accessible for each and every student. And we're encouraging all schools to use that, to be able to record extracurricular activity, which we also know when students are involved in extracurricular activity, it does enhance their employability and their sense of well-being. But we also know if students who have caring responsibilities or part-time jobs are encouraged to sit down and reflect on the skills development they have as a result of the different activities they're involved in, it really helps their self-esteem and enhances their confidence when being able to be much more articulate when they go for a job. So a really important work stream that I think is great. And each of these work streams have different leaders from across the Queen Mary community. The final one, the learning environment, which was almost an add-on of one of the TEF meetings before the TEF working group became the Going for Gold operations group. We were sat around pondering, and I have to say, that group, which is a massive group as well, in fact we've run out of space in all the rooms, and we're thankfully now the SU is letting us use one of their rooms, which can accommodate many more people. It's so large now, but everybody passionate. We must have been, how can anybody really thrive if the environment's got so many things wrong with it? So I think this work stream, once again, looking a lot more about both physical and online communities and what it looks like, and thinking how we get that, how we get that community feel. Because Going for Gold is about establishing a community of practice. All the community working together. And I always say, you know what, I think some of the best staff on campus in terms of acknowledging people and being exceptionally polite are our security staff and many of our grounds people. And I have yet to speak to them because I need, and this is something I really want to do. They are great. They are so focused on making sure we've got a brilliant, safe space in which we can all operate. So each and every person has their role to play. I think 4.3, values and behaviours, absolutely crucial. We're working up our new strategy, we're working up our new set of values that we all will live and breathe because we're so committed to them, and that will be real key in terms of moving forward. And then we've got space management and timetabling at the bottom there, thinking about how we make sure we better block out so that we're able to utilise our space wisely, but also follow the learner, or also make sure staff have better blocks of time as well. And I have to say, I think this is a great pillar because by and large this pillar is being led by students. And there are sponsors of the students to support them to help their development, the sabbatical officers, and I think that it's made great progress. So that's what Going for Gold is, and I know many of you have sent in questions before. We're going to answer those and we'll flip up and come back so that you understand the different points. I did want to emphasise though, the 4 pillars are absolutely crucial. They've been really, really carefully tested throughout the whole of the campus amongst different communities. Similarly with the work strands, but I emphasise the work strands are things that you may engage with, you may not. It will depend on where you're situated and what you think is going to be able to address that issue of enhancing the student voice and really, really driving up learning performance. The final thing that I want to say before I pass over to this wonderful panel here is to just say something about where are we now with Going for Gold. Going for Gold, as I said to you, has individuals leading the work strands. They've got teams working with them, once again from across PSS, academic staff, different staff, students, etc. Really good mix across the faculties. They've also got quarterly targets to be met, and those targets are reported to Council as well. Council are really, really keen to see that we're making a difference. And I have to say also, Council are very, very keen on this initiative because whilst they recognise it's great that everybody's passionate about teaching and learning, but where's the evidence? Which I think is a fair question to ask. Quarterly targets in our first quarter, I'd just like to highlight a couple of areas that have gone well, because they've not all gone well, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The areas that I want to highlight is exceeding our expectations, and I kind of think, should I embarrass certain people in here that have done an amazing job? So when we look at student engagement, a key area that I still think is astonishing, and apologies to people that I've told this story so many times because I'm still so amazed by it, is the hiring then of student interns as researchers to look at issues that we have. And Christine Parry from Law, where are you, Christine? Yeah, there she is. Christine, I think when she embarked on this, probably never realised that this could be her full-time job. Because when we had the discussions about what this work strand entailed, and when I say we, Catherine Bevan, sorry Catherine, put your hand up, project manager, so Catherine's had to be in all these different meetings with me as well, so we shaped things up. Pressing Christine on this, well, we hope we get 20 applicants. I think we probably will start with 3, two per these 3 areas. So the advert went out, and it was kind of fingers crossed. Do we know how many are coming in? Red One, did you get more from the words to go as well? Perhaps, yeah, sorry, we wrote Red One, who's the sabbatical officer for education and for virtually everything. Sorry, Red One. And we got 260 applicants from across all campuses. Many of them saying they were committed to applying for this because they wanted to serve the whole university well, not just a particular area. And the passion about Queen Mary came across so strongly. So first SIP happened, and how many did we manage to get down to?
24.
Sorry, 220 I thought was
It was
the first.
240,
Yeah.
and then down to 24
Yeah.
for...
So down to 240 and then down. Massive, that in itself, you know from your own experiences when you're doing shortlist, so long list and short list. So then it was, right, let's go forward. I wrote to every one of those to say thank you so much. Just thinking also I wanted to keep them warm in case we wanted to use any more, which is a good thing that we did that. And then we decided a number of projects we could do with focus groups to get a better sense of what students were really wanting. So that's going ahead. Christina has already run a research methods course because we thought along with paying them the living wage, we also would provide training for them. So they've done a social science research methods training module, and Christina ran that past me. And I have to say, I thought, whoa, I could have done this back in the days when I was at PGT and had to do a little research methods set of workshops with them. It was such a rigorous bit of training, and I thought, this is really great, this is really going to enhance students' prospects. So I think it's running now. We've got kind of a supervisory system for that as well. Student interns are working across a range of the projects now, and then we thought we needed to enhance supervision. One of the things I have said, because people have been so excited, oh well, we want interns, we want interns, we want interns. The big issue is, let's see how it goes though. I think the impact as well, we're saying maximum 6 hours a week, but I think it's a great project, and I'd love to see it grow and move forward, but a step at a time, because it's still early days. The other area that I'd really like to highlight is in Pillar 4, where Ahmad and Tom have been working so closely with, and I'll pick on Emmanuel now from the States, working really, really well in terms of looking at what makes this sticky campus. And by sticky, that we're all prepared to stay on the campus, well, not prepared to stay, we want to. It is the greatest campus. Is it not the greatest campus? Or is Whitechapel greater? Tom, I know you're going to say sorry, don't you? Just get the lighting sorted out, Whitechapel will be better. Yes, we've got 5 campuses. They all need to be equally exciting places to be able to live, work, eat, breathe. But I think the campus does have, this campus particularly now, has already got a much better feel, because there has been a lot of investment, and thank you Ian for being so prompt in delivering things, but I think Emmanuel now is working really closely in looking at Whitechapel as well. So, we're on a journey. I think it's an exciting journey. Some of the areas aren't working as well as they should do, and I've had a discussion with 2 of the 3 deans for education, and then the VPs, faculty VPs, because this week considering and having some early soundings in terms of can we offer more support at the faculty level. So I think in the new year, rather than saying, for example, when Newell is telling you about the Going for Gold Academy and some of the training that we're offering, rather than saying it will be centralised, I think doing that much more, what we talked about but haven't actually done, in terms of the next step will be much more than at the local level starting in the new year, so you can really get motoring, because some of those KPIs, the quarter 1 KPIs haven't been met, and of course we're coming up to quarter 2, not that far off. So that's Going for Gold. I'd just like to thank the many people who now, I'd say, form the community of practice, and it is an amazing community of practice. If you're not part of it, you need to become part of it, because it is exciting, it is making a difference already to students' lives and ability to progress and do well and enjoy being here, and staff lives as well. But I think from January I want to put more emphasis on supporting people at the faculty and the school level now, take it to the next level. Right, so I think that's all I need to say. So now can I introduce you to the chair of the panel? And do you want to all introduce yourselves?
Yeah,
Zach, I'll pass it over to you.
Can everyone hear me? Yes? Wonderful. So the format for the next hour or so is going to be a panel discussion. We've had some great questions sent in from colleagues across the university. Some of them relate generally to Going for Gold, some of them relate to specific work streams. Janet's kindly going to put the relevant work streams on the screen behind me as we go through. I will be throwing it over to you throughout the discussion to add any comments or questions. Can I ask that you just put your hand up, and Elizabeth has the microphone and she'll come along and hand that over to you, and I will get to you as soon as possible. Please bear with me. Bear in mind we have characters on this panel who like to talk a lot. So I will get to you as and when I can.
I hope you're not talking about me, Sam.
Oh, heavens, no. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Zach Riddell. I'm the Faculty Education Manager for Science and Engineering. On our panel today, we have Professor Tony Michael, who's the Dean for Education for Science and Engineering, Emily Huns, Head of Careers and Enterprise, Emmanuel Nebo, Senior Project Manager for Estates and Facilities, Redwan Shahid, QMSU Vice President Education, Will Hudson-Jones, who is the Project Manager for Continuing Professional Development, and of course, Stephanie Marshall. Okay, so first up, this relates to some work around student feedback. So Tony, what is wrong with module evaluations? Aren't we reinventing the wheel and just creating feedback? Survey fatigue.
So, thank you, Zach. The two obvious issues with our current approach to module evaluations. First thing to say is that I think we're all disappointed with the response rates. We're all familiar with getting such low response rates that we don't feel that we can meaningfully act on that feedback. The second issue is probably the cause of the first, which is that we ask students for their feedback on modules at the end of the module. Very often we don't get that data analysed until into the next semester. So we're reliant on students providing us with feedback for the next academic year and cohorts come through. So what we're exploring under this work stream, looking at module evaluations, is alternative ways of gauging students' opinion during semester, when there's still time to do something with that feedback, and hopefully build a more positive culture of dialogue between the students and staff that lead to improvement.
Yep. If I also just add to that, I think one of the biggest reasons that students kind of don't engage with any sort of service or giving feedback is that historically, not just our institution, but across the board, we're really bad at closing the feedback loop. And I think one of the biggest or most important ways that you can increase engagement is by showing that any engagement that's already there is valued, and that if you are filling in these module evaluations, something's coming out of it. And I think we just need to get better at kind of communicating that to students.
And a quiet audience. Okay. So, question for Emily. How do you plan to embed careers and enterprise support in the curriculum? Do you expect academics to pick this up and course content to be compromised to fit this in?
I love that question. I think, in short, incredibly carefully and in very close conversation with school colleagues. And just to share some rationale, I've begun this journey by talking with the Deans for Education to assess what might be reasonable. We know the principal has outlined the nature of our demographic. We know what the research says about attainment gap around employment outcomes. And our engagement in careers and enterprise, whilst reasonable, is only at around 60% of our undergraduates. Meanwhile, if you look at our highly skilled employment and further study figures, which of course feed into the TEF, we are at 79% of those who are overall in work, study, and that, just to illustrate, puts us 6.5% away from the average highly skilled rate achieved by gold awarded Russell Group institutions. So we have a way to travel, we know that, and I think for a while our conversation's been turning to how can we engage the right people at the right time, because of course that 60%, great that they're engaging, they may be engaging too late, they may be engaging in the wrong thing. And what all the research findings point towards is a set of key components that make up student employability. And there have been very few surprises in there. Essentially, a student needs to explore their options and reflect on those options to make good informed career choice. They need to acquire meaningful work experience, develop their graduate networks. They need some form of rough plan to take them on that journey. And of course they need to learn to self-present in an evidence-based way. So are we getting the right messages to our students early enough? And are we getting the right messages to all of our students early enough? And the only way it seems to us to do that is through some kind of sensitively applied in-curricular route, with a clear structured pathway and done in a way that is very much discipline informed and in very close partnership with the schools. So that's the journey we're embarking on. And of course, it is done in plenty of schools already. Not comprehensively, but there's lots of really good practice in there. And no, I don't think it's massive change. I think it's lots of little tweaks. And we're going to start by consulting the schools on partnering agreements, annually reviewed, which lay out what both parties can expect from each other in the course of that year. So I hope that answers that question.
Any comments? Questions? Well, it's very easy right now. Okay, our esteemed student union representative, red one. Do you think it is appropriate to involve students in researching issues like the Bayes Taylor gap? Why use them rather than professional researchers?
So I would go a step above that and say, not even appropriate, I think it's imperative that we are utilizing our student body. I think when we were going through the applications, that's one thing I realized. I kind of already knew, but that was like evidence for me that the level of competency in our student body and the skills and passion that they have, I think to an extent they do go unnoticed. And it's not like we're employing them, throwing them out and saying just do this. They are given professional training. They're measured against targets and outcomes, and they're supported by a relevant staff member throughout the entire process. And I think this is kind of, it touches a lot of different things that this new strategy is kind of aiming to do, like employability, giving soft skills, raising aspirations, and it's providing an opportunity to develop our students. And on top of that, it's one of those things, the more we invest into our student body, the more we can raise their confidence, the better the outcomes would be post kind of their studies. And the last thing, I think the nature of the research topics, things like retention, things like the attainment gap, a lot of these, because our community is unique, not even in terms of the people that come here, but where we're located, the context in which our students find themselves in university, it's quite important that there is that level of understanding of what a student faces day to day, and it makes for a very it makes for a much easier conversation when a student's doing that research, and it's just skills that they can take forward as well, and something they can be proud of after that.
Thank you. Okay, next one is it. Well, there are plenty of academics in the room, so I'm sure we'll agree with this. Emmanuel, our lecturing need improvements. There's a lack of projectors, a lack of space for students. What is being done in this area?
Thanks, Matt, for the question. Clearly, this is very important stuff for academics. In 2015, the State Department together with IT undertook an audit to understand the conditions of our existing teaching spaces. From that audit, we identified high priority areas that needed improvement. So we undertook a coordinated refurbishment program with IT to replace the existing not fit for purpose radio AV equipment, as well as refurbish those spaces. Later last year as well, we undertook a further audit to understand where we stood with regards to our assets in teaching spaces, and we, together with IT, carried out a refurbishment program on teaching rooms. So case in point, in this building, for example, we undertook 23 rooms, refurbishment of 23 rooms. And we have a rolling program of refurbishing our teaching spaces. We are clearly minded that there's a lot of pressure on teaching spaces and spaces for students as well. In the background, our department, Estates and Facilities, are working out the state's master plan exercise. The exercise is looking at space pressures and undertaking, and we are undertaking some massive exercises to understand where we can actually improve our teaching and academic spaces. So there's a lot happening in that area. With regards to informal social spaces for students where they can hang around in between focused learning, we've also started to provide new learning spaces within foyers in our buildings. That program is being developed further into what we now call happening in the background, and we are hoping that we continue to realize all these refurbishment movements across our estates. So rest assured, this room is on line for refurbishment. We started in Easter, and my colleague William is leading that refurbishment to replace the East room. So you'll see some improvements across our business.
Question back? If you just wait for the microphone.
I just wanted to add, related as you're talking about rooms and facilities within rooms, I think a lot could be done about making people aware of what's available in each room and what facilities are where. I work in careers and I find it quite difficult to book rooms with the specifications that we need because the information is quite spread out across the timetabling estates websites, and I see a lot of rooms being either underutilised, rooms are being booked and they don't use the facilities in the room, or people are struggling to find rooms with the projectors, with the facilities that they need. So perhaps that might help us use the space a bit better if it's clearer what's available in each room.
Okay, well, thanks for that feedback. I'll definitely share that with colleagues in the timetable to ensure that it's fed back to users who want to engage with that. And it's also worth saying that we currently have the QM app that gives you information on room availabilities as well, so you may want to access that piece of information as well. But we'll definitely take back your comments and try and provide a better service.
And you know he has to because it's being recorded. Was there another question down this here, down the front here?
So I conducted a student staff liaison committee yesterday, and thank you.
So I conducted a student staff liaison committee yesterday, and the only complaint the students had was the graduate centre, which is a new building, as you know, which blows out hot air in summer when it's baking hot and cold air in winter. Now, the staff who use the graduate centre regularly have finally understood how to manage the heating system and the cooling system. But it's counterintuitive. You have to close windows in order to make the air conditioning work, and you have to do other things that are counterintuitive to make the heating work. Could it not be simplified? Because students sit in coats when we're doing lessons in October or November. The heating finally seems to start working mid-November after reading week, perhaps. This was the one complaint. The other one was a suggestion, and I don't know, people may laugh at this, but I thought it was quite a good suggestion. One of my students said that he was sitting in the library and, you know, it can get a little bit tiring in the library studying. He put his head down on the desk and had a 10-minute power nap, but was woken up by the library staff and told he couldn't sleep in the library. He asked if there could be power nap spaces at the campus. And I thought, you know what, we have them in airports and everywhere else. We always talk about the power of a power nap. Maybe that's a suggestion we could take on board.
As long as it's a start as well.
Equal opportunity.
Can I just ask if we now have a non-estates facilities? I'm just thinking about taking pressure off the man, not taking pressure off the man, I think it's dated. But in terms of, I think a lot of these sorts of issues have been long and are in the process of being addressed. Not to belittle them in any way, but I think in terms of the 4 pillars and the 16 work strands, it would be good perhaps if there are questions around some of the other areas, it would be helpful.
It would be useful if you have comments made on themes today, to email the Going for Gold email address. Right, I'll move on to next question. This is a lengthy one, so please bear with me. Newell, I've been told recently that TAs will be required to have or be going toward HEA Associate Fellowship as part of the TEF Going for Gold effort, in order to have their contracts renewed in 2019-20, regardless of their continuous employment or teaching experience. Will this require a taught silk route or only require applying for Associate HEA Fellowship on paper? If the former, does the university plan to pay TAs for this training requirement to support the university's TEF training? Everyone get that?
Okay, so I think there's 3 points in that question, and the first is about TAs being told that they have to either be going forward or have HAS Associate Fellowship in order to have their contracts renewed. That's not really the spirit of Going for Gold. It's not about bludgeoning people around the head with what we want you to do. It's more about trying to encourage and drive the ambition to go towards fellowship and to give you the opportunities to do that. There are a few routes open. It's not just the Taught Silk route. There is the Taught PG Cap route or fellowship through the Adept, and we are working with faculties and schools to also look at other ways we can try and facilitate that and do something that can be more granular and personalised. We're bringing in external trainers at the moment who each have nearly 20 years of experience working with the AGA, and I have seen people here who've been on some of those courses or some of those sessions which have had incredibly good feedback. And the one thing I will say is we will be supporting and paying TAs to undertake this development. So that is something that can, I think, put a lot of people's minds at ease. The one thing I'm really happy to be able to say today is that we have dates for January, February and March all confirmed, and I'll be sending those dates out to the schools and faculty events, and that will be for the central sessions that we're doing, as well as dates for them to look at their own personal sessions as well. I think that covers it.
Great. Stephanie. Hello.
Hello.
Where does students' mental health and well-being fit into the Going for Gold philosophy?
I happen to think student mental health is an issue that's kind of a really holistic, big issue. I think the learning environment is really, really important in that space as well, whilst not denying that what can be offered in terms of student support via the various support services. But I would hope when we look at the inclusive curriculum, that, of course, is to do with a range of issues around inclusivity, to do with as well students' mental well-being, better able to engage. So I think when we look at the inclusive curriculum in terms of a big project that Red One is leading in terms of piloting in a couple of schools, first of all, when we look at the curriculum, can each and every individual see themselves in that curriculum? And I don't know if anybody's aware of, say, for example, the project at Kingston, which looked at not just BAME students, but looked particularly at students with disabilities. And of course, mental health can be a disability. It can also be something that keeps people very well as well. So looking at all aspects of a student's well-being by the curriculum, I would argue also pedagogic approaches are really important in that space as well. And that's something that we both need to look at. And recently, in a number of the presentations I've been giving around schools, I think schools are really concerned to support their staff in appropriate pedagogic processes that are more fit for purpose, particularly in terms of moving forward and with increased numbers within a number of the sessions they have. So academic advising, another area as well, which I think is kind of spotting the early signs. When we move to learner analytics, which is a bit further down the line, I understand it'll be about some before we get there. That'll be another way that we can actually support early interventions. But also recognising that the academic advisors are just that, the academic advisors, but knowing then what support and referrals they might be able to then suggest to the student. But part of it is out with Going for Gold. It's kind of the holistic approach.
Hi there, thanks. Recently I saw demonstrations by two universities, both who had gold status, of using software and data to track engagement. Both of them attributed this to, at least in part, to their success. Is there much appetite here for a Big Brother approach like that? And when could we see it?
I'm happy. campus, but they're engaging with the lectures as they go along, great, but it's suddenly when there's a complete drop-off of any engagement, then there's clearly an issue, and I think it should trigger then some sort of an approach to find out, is there something wrong? Of course, we're starting to use across the piece now the UK Engagement Survey, which of course is a national survey, but it's based very much on students' engagement with the discipline. So it isn't as if we could get a metric for the, well, we could get a metric for the whole university out of it, but it's much more useful, I think, at the local level in terms of the skills development of students and looking at what it is that they're really engaging with in terms of their discipline. And I've been really, really delighted. I mean, Sarah's leading that particular work strand, and I think we've been thrilled, haven't we, in terms of the interest in that work strand, in terms of saying, yes, we do want to get involved. Because last year it was voluntary, very few schools used it, but this year the appetite across the piece has been so much greater. I think that will help. But I always say, nothing beats having your ear to the ground, and I know some people push back and say that there's large classes, but then we need them to think, and that's why we've also got peer-led team learning in there as well. So it's that peer-to-peer support as well. And encouraging communities, and communities might be the sports communities, because that's another way of making sure we're keeping an eye out on people's well-being and progress, etc. So I'd say, you know, let's promote a community of practice, but there are a number of tools that we'll use to make sure we're supporting individuals.
Well, I think I'll say that as part of this project, a number of us have visited various universities around the UK, and the two that I had in my mind up to most of the moment were visits to Aston and to Nottingham-on-Trent. And their learner analytics were absolutely fantastic. But they crucially, and I should say the sabbatical officers have come with us on those visits, they've been put together with the students, so you avoid the Big Brother. It's absolutely supportive, it's about monitoring, and the students want to know when they're disengaging. And actually if they don't respond to being contacted, that tells us they're really disengaged. So I think there are ways of approaching this that don't feel like Big Brother, they do feel supportive, and the key to that seems to be working with students, which is entirely what we're trying to achieve here.
Great. Could I just comment on that? Sorry, because I mean this is something I'm quite passionate about. It's not Big Brother approach, because when you think about it, and I work for 8 organisations, when I used to work in industry, you used to have colleagues, if they didn't turn up for work, you were concerned about them. You were thinking, well, are they okay? You know, trying to find out whether they were okay, if they were ill, if someone's looking after them, etc. And here we've got community. So if people are not engaging, we're concerned about them. And the student analytics or the student learning part, I think is a good tool. Actually can be used as a flag, because if someone isn't engaging, we are concerned about them, we're worried about them, making sure that they're okay. And that is not a Big Brother, that's a community working together, looking after each other. And we need to get to that position so that we feel that everyone is looking after each other.
100%. I use the term flippantly. I mean, as a data analyst, I'm absolutely in favour of this.
But it's great to use
But it's really good to hear everyone so passionately against.
It's great to use the term because we should challenge ourselves, because it
Yeah.
isn't a Big Brother approach. It's actually, we are a community and we want to look after each other. So what's the best way of doing that?
And I think it is always that co-creation and transparency. That combination, I think, is really, really powerful. So we've known our approaches.
Okay, so that was the rehearsed bit. Everyone knew those questions were coming. They don't know which order or what I'm going to ask next, but before I do that, does anyone have any questions about anything that hasn't been covered yet? No? Okay. All right. Well, I'll start us off then. Stephanie, how is going for gold different from the QM model?
The QM model, I mean, okay, it'll roll off the tongue longer when I say it's been embedded in terms of where we're going now. But where do I start with the differences? I could start with the major difference, which is it's been co-created with our whole community, and I think that's really, really powerful. There are aspects of the Queen Mary model that I think staff put a lot of time into developing and have proved worthwhile, and so why would we not say, carry on with those? And I know some people are very, very precious about certain modules that you did create. And I think, and why shouldn't you be? Because you created them with the end in mind, i.e. really delivering excellent student learning outcomes. That's what anything has to be. I'm delighted that there are things like the skills portfolio has been able to be rolled into the year in terms of the work that Brett's been doing. I think some of the personal tutoring, some of the aspects of that are being rolled into the academic advising. So I think it's being folded in. But I think the folding in is in a way that the student suggests is appropriate to their needs. And I think the really important thing is the student seeing this as being appropriate to their needs. I think that valuing of each and every student is unique to the Going for Gold, and I think it's come from probably this growing community of practice that is Going for Gold, that actually so values each other as well, and wants to see everybody thrive, wants to support. We're talking about now more mentoring schemes, staff, students, for BME staff, LGBT students, and staff, and just working at, or mentoring more generally, and supporting each other in our journey. So I think there are some really distinctive differences that I hope you feel actually make you feel you really own Going for Gold, and I think that's really important.
Okay, I'll leave Stephanie alone for a minute. Tony, academics are overloaded. How are they going to take on more advising?
Thank you for the question. Well, the easy ones. Did we get to the hard ones? The overloaded is something I recognise. I think we recognise staff are under pressure with competing commitments. The academic advising, my understanding of what's proposed, what's in mind, what's in train, is actually about making better use of our time with students to provide more effective support. So I certainly don't see it as an increase. I see that we're making better use of our time. We would expect any member of staff who's got advisees to devote 2 hours per week, up to 8 hours per year, but whether we're making the best use of those hours by setting office hours, which may or may not coincide with student availability, or whether we can have more focused, more targeted discussions with students. I'm also going to say, and this may be less popular, is that we tend to do, particularly in point of view of the academic advisor, I've got to spend 50 hours this year with students. When you do those arithmetic from the student's point of view, it's 2 hours of individual attention across a 3-year degree, and that doesn't sound like an awful lot when we consider the fees involved. So I think we have to think of this from a student perspective as well as from a member of staff perspective. But we do need to design, we are designing something which is manageable. It doesn't increase the workload, it just makes more effective use of that time spent with students. That's your question.
Zach, can I add something?
Yes.
One of the initiatives this year in Welcome Week that a few schools adopted, which I really, really applauded and thought was wonderful, was where the academic advisor organised a week-long programme that was experiential learning out in the field work, just to get students bonding with the academic advisor. And I think that initiatives like that, where everybody's having fun together whilst discovering a new approach, and I guess Alistair Owens isn't in here, I'd pick on him even if he was, thinking geographers who are in the room, well done to you for that initiative, because of course that work down the Roman road has led to other spin-offs that I think are really exciting. But the thing is, already the relationships with the academic advisees have already been forged and are strong. And I think with something like that, then, it makes it so much easier to have the one-on-ones. Because I've heard some people when I've gone around saying, but I don't know what to say to them. And I think, well, that's rather tragic. So it's kind of how that relationship building, nothing can replace relationship building.
Okay, so considering work that is within the strategy around advising, student voice, feedback, etc., and I'll throw this is for everyone, but I'll throw it to Redmond first because I think I'll have an opinion. Are we just pandering to a snowflake generation?
Short answer, no. Long answer, I feel like the strategy is about putting the communities at Queen Mary at the centre of it, rather than being prescriptive. It's more, this is what excellence looks like, we want to help to achieve it. I don't know. I don't think we are. I don't know what to say to that question. But yeah, I don't think even have like I wouldn't even put that as a thought going forward. And I don't know. No.
Well, let me ask a follow-up to the academics on the panel. Is it pandering to involve students so heavily with assessment and feedback? They don't know what they don't know. Why should they be designing the curriculum?
So, given that the verb that's used repeatedly is about co-creating, this isn't about one or other designing the curriculum, it's about working in partnership. And those partnerships take various forms. So there are partnerships which are, you said the academic members of the panel, but they're the academic schools and institutes working with professional services. They're working with students. They're actually making the most of all the resource and all the intelligence we have in this room and outside this room to deliver the best we possibly can, and assess in the most appropriate way. Is it pandering, or is it actually recognising that things have changed and adjusting and accommodating to that, as opposed to pandering? And is there even such a thing as a snowflake generation?
Yeah, I think we should open it up to the sabbatical officers if they want to comment further on that.
I'd like to comment.
I thought you were. I thought you were. Quite
Sorry, Emma, can you also introduce yourself? Just noticed when people have been picking up mics, they also haven't introduced themselves. That'd be really helpful as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm VP Welfare, so I work with Red One in the Executive Officer team. I mean, you can ask that question, but pandering got you a silver. So I was not pandering got you a silver. So I don't really see why that's even a question. And actually, if it's not a student-focused approach, what are we doing here? Like, what are any of us doing here? So I just don't see.
What should university is all about?
Yeah, like what does that achieve by asking that? In my opinion.
For the record.
Ahmed, did you want to say something? Ahmed, want to say something?
No, I was just really confused about the question. So is there only snowflakes that want good education and good employability skills? It doesn't really make sense to have that question. The rest of the people just melt away into unemployment. I don't know. Like,
I agree. I don't think there's anyone on this panel, possibly in the room, that would share the opinion of students being snowflakes and being pandered to, but it is a perception that is out there.
If I can, sorry.
Just, I guess, just in defence of the question, I do think it goes back to what you were saying about the nature of the partnership, and I think sometimes, thank you, I think it might not be a 50-50 relationship all the time, and I think as professional staff and as academics we do have a duty to co-create, but this is about educating and working together. And yes, the student opinion is important, but there are things that we will contribute on and lead on as well. So I think maybe pandering is not the right word, but I think it's important to feel like we have as much of a stake in it as well as the students. We're not being led by students, we're doing this together and co-creating together.
If I can quickly comment on that as well, I think when myself and Stephanie, we visited the schools and people were talking about issues, and then I was kind of there being the kind of, this is all the things students have told me, these are all the issues. I think staff generally, when they do engage, they'll be surprised at how much their ideas align. So it's like this myth that just exists that students want, to come to university, not really learn anything, have a fun time, leave, that's it. But it's absolutely not true. And when you do bring those two sets of ideas together, there's more common than differences.
And I think what surprised me as well was, when I asked a few people, who are the experts on the student voice? Surely the students. And it's kind of like, for some people it's been a real eureka moment. So if you need to know what students think, you ask them, because they're the ones that know.
Okay, I'll take two quick comments. First one at the back, and then go to DC.
We've got Tom. Tom,
yes,
obviously, yeah.
There's only one chair.
Sorry, Zara.
Well, and then we'll finish with the student voice.
Tom was looking demure there, maybe there was another student. Sorry.
So I'd just like to add a twist on that question, that generated comment based on, I asked a question on co-creation at the Two Cultures debate we had here at Queen Mary, which was fantastic, with Sir Paul Nurse and Tristan Hunt, and about what they felt about co-creation. And I think Sir Paul Nurse's answer to that might help view that question in a less negative light, I guess. So he was concerned about the necessity to maintain expertise and the importance of passing on expertise to the students. And I think maybe that question is a reflection of the concern that the credibility of expertise and learning that has been undermined so much in the wider context could be somehow affected by this concept of co-creation. I don't see it, but I wonder if that's the source of that question, and whether the panel maybe would like to offer any reassurance on that, I guess, on how they view co-creation and academic and professional staff as experts in their area that need to pass on learning to the students, coexisting.
Yeah, okay, quick response would be, yeah, the microphone's making its way down, so I think it's already been addressed, and when we see this as a partnership of equals, actually why did we get this way around? I don't see co-creation in any way, shape or form as a threat. This isn't about who has the whip hand in dictating what the agenda is, it's about genuine partnership working. We've only got to look at what we're doing around the You Said We Did approach, which did suggest that power resided more in one area than another, and the university slave should go after whatever a student asks for, as opposed to, well, tell us because we want to know, and then we'll see what we can do to deliver. So I think we're moving from something that could be seen as just a kind of crowd pleaser and a TEF-driven approach to something which is far more sincere, is actually just the way Queen Mary works.
And just to pick up on what Redwan said about this is often we have more in common than we perhaps think. I think it's quite a confidence booster to co-create, because as often as not you're realising that what you had in mind is also something that the students would value. So you go forward more confidently and more effectively as a result.
Last comment.
Yeah, I guess building on what's just been said, to be honest, I think co-creation is I disagree with the point raised earlier that it is student-led, but it's also staff-led, and that's the whole point. It's a partnership. And I think, to use an example, that the workshop I'm leading on, working with Emmanuel on the estate side of things as well as Ahmed, you could say estates, why on earth do you need students and estates? Well, actually, students kind of, have views on things, have opinions on things, and actually they're things that often aren't picked up. And in the same way, staff have views on things and opinions and expertise on things, and it works both ways. So I think, I guess some of the hesitation could be, is this just because they're going for gold? Is this kind of, let's get a token student voice? And actually, I think it's not. And I think from the four of us working with Stephanie, with Colin, with the kind of senior team, we've seen that this, is genuine. And I think the word is kind of pioneering instead of pandering. That it's a real kind of unique thing. It is very unique, and I think, we're all very pleased to be so involved in it and taking it kind of seriously.
Thank you. I'm going to finish that with the student voice. We've got just over 10 minutes left, so I'm going to ask a very quick question of Emily, and we'll throw it open to the audience for any remaining questions. So Emily, briefly, what is the HEAR?
The HEAR stands for Higher Education Achievement Report, and as many of you know, I am sure it is a way of more comprehensively recording and recognising the broader range of achievements that students attain whilst they're at university. So, for example, in section 6.1, which Brett is leading a work stream on and many of us are involved in, we're auditing at the moment, looking at all the wonderful activities that develop employability skills, confidence out there that students do. Stephanie mentioned some of them. Establishing how we can sensibly verify them and drop them into the digital transcript so that students value them more and so that employers value them more. And this has been around for 10 years or so, but to date, Queen Mary has only put academic prizes into that section, 6.1, so we're broadening that out.
Okay, I'll throw it open to questions from the floor. I'll have most chairs, so we'll try and finish on time. Elena.
I have a kind of two-part question, kind of about the structure of Going for Gold. One is, obviously we have the work streams, and they each have a lead and each have often a team behind it. There are other staff in the institution that have expertise in that area and that may feel that they would like to contribute to that. What is the mechanism that they can do that? How could they contribute to a work stream when they feel they have an expertise that maybe hasn't been heard relevant to that work stream? And secondary to that, what happens when Going for Gold ends? Where does this work continue? So for example, the Student Interns as an initiative is a great initiative. But we start doing that, and that's being at the moment headed up by an academic lead in a specific way. What happens to that afterwards, and to all the other kind of pieces of work that started for Going for Gold? Who owns them, and where do they go afterwards?
Right, I shall do this one. Right, so the three-part question then, Elena. First of all, in terms of the Going for Gold and the people involved, we've already had, I mean, Catherine and I were discussing this only this morning in terms of, we've had so many people contacting us to say we'd really like to help, which absolutely thrilled about, which I think then when we cascade down now to much more work going on at the faculty level and the school level, we will need more help. And so I think there'll be some great opportunities then, and I think also we'll get more of a bottom-up approach. And hopefully more of the student reps as well, because I think the team has put a lot of effort into training up. Everyone is kind of have the oversight of student reps being trained, so that they feel more confident in their voice in terms of the SSLCs, which I think is great. So if we could see more of that happening, but also Catherine and I were saying, we wanted to encourage people if they felt their expertise wasn't being used and it could be used to actually subsequent to this workshop, make sure you let us know what it is that you think you'd like to contribute to. But also the other thing was, if people felt that there's another initiative going on that should be joined up, we want to make sure that we're not duplicating as well. So I think that's really important. So, you know, we've got 3 of these launch events. This is the one on this campus, but we want to make sure we're really joined up, we're efficient and effective in what we're doing, because we are doing something really, really pioneering. I love that term, pioneering. We haven't used it before, so thank you for that. Because it is. We've got a very, very different approach to co-creation, or students as partners, to any university I've seen, because it is real, and it needs to continue. So where's Going for Gold going to? Well, we're Going for Gold. It'll be rolled in to the 2030 education strategy, because those 4 pillars, I mean, 3 months to actually establish, these are the 4 areas that we feel absolutely passionately about in terms of moving into the future, having this wonderful vision of what education should look like at Queen Mary. And I think sometimes we can think, oh, great, we should be able to get there by tomorrow. If only, no, it's going to take work. When we get to December 2019, just before the test submission the following year, we're not going to say that's the end of Going for Gold. No, it's going to feed in. Because the other thing that I think is exciting about Going for Gold is when we get the gold, we'll be so much more eligible for some different badges and sorts of recognition that in a sense we're precluded from going from or receiving at the moment. We want to be there. Everybody's really excited about being there. So it's work in progress. And, you know, even 2030, who knows what this university will look like. I mean, no, I'm not going to pick on any of the staff and say they might be vice chancellor at that time and be leading the way. Who knows? That might be a really rapid promotion, actually. I keep encouraging them. But seriously, you know, the quest for excellence is never ending. Gold, really, okay, yes, it's based on the TEF medals, But this is a quest for excellence and a co-creating piece that makes us so distinctive around the globe in terms of what we're doing in the education space. And I think it is that distinctiveness and world-classness that I felt getting involved in this project and working with the people I do. I can feel it. It's exciting. It's buzzy. We know we have a lot to do, but I think that energizes people, and the energy has to keep moving forward. To the point about the interns, well, once again, as I said to you earlier before we started this session, Elaine, and I should say Elaine has very kindly offered to do some supervision with some of the interns that we've decided to employ in some other areas as well that we know need looking at. And we need guidelines, we need to build up the infrastructure for the interns. But if that works out, and we think, you know, it makes an impact, students are feeding back at the end and saying, this has made a real difference to my life and made me much happier, you know, staying on campus, developed a range of new skills, assisted with employability. Of course we'll do more of it, but then we need the infrastructure to support that.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. Back there.
As I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the biggest challenges to Going for Gold is a cultural shift in how we operate as a university and increasingly putting students at the heart of what we do. In its first 7 months, the Student Processes Improvement Programme has revealed an increasing level of variety and differing practice in student processes across schools and institutes, and subsequently differing levels of student experience. How does Going for Gold plan to ensure that the aspirational pillars of excellence are delivered for all students across all schools and institutes, and deliver a cultural shift?
Fantastic question. Can I quickly make one comment about students? So one thing I want to say, and it's really good that, especially in this academic year, what we've seen is every committee where you can find a student, just put them in there, which is great. And I think having friends at other institutes who are also executive officers, we're doing a lot better in terms of getting students in places where they can speak. So we're making progress in that. I think one thing going forward we need to also be conscious of is that when we just invite students into a space that already exists, the power dynamics don't always allow them to put their opinions forward. So I think right now the shift needs to also focus on that side of things where we're getting students in, but how can we ensure that they're in an environment where they feel like they can valuably contribute to the discussions that's going on there and then the rest of it.
So, Emily, how about you? With careers and enterprise employability students, how do we make sure that this is valuable across the
And consistent and sustainable. Yeah, well, I'm certainly looking at that in my area, and I guess part of the culture shift is session today and subsequent sessions and learning about co-creation and working out what that's going to look like in all of our areas. But certainly in Careers and Enterprise, we are absolutely committed to having a team of students working with us. We already have students working with us, but expanding that team and building it into our faculty structures and using those students as advisors so that continuously we're getting that feedback loop, just the way that will work for us. We actually think that students could also be peer presenters in Careers and Enterprise and some of the bread and butter stuff that we do. But it will work differently, won't it, in every department.
Well, Stephanie, I'll let you have the final word. So how do we ensure, just on that point, how do we ensure that we are making suitable changes and improvements across the university, across all three faculties, across our campuses, across our schools? Whilst not all schools have to engage in the work streams, how do we ensure that outstanding students do this?
Yeah. I would say the first thing is, when I arrived, started regular meetings with the Deans of Education, and I've got two of the Deans here. Sorry, all three. Yeah, all three.
Colleen's gone.
Okay. Two of the Deans here. Well, I don't know about you, but I found those meetings amazing in terms of exchanging what's an approach, and there'll be one dean who will say, this is what, the way we're now kind of cascading this down and the way we're approaching this. And suddenly, right, okay, let's harmonise it, and there's been a lot of harmonisation going on already over this year. The other thing that we discussed that hasn't actually kicked in yet was saying, actually also all of our directors of education should be on the same page in terms of a bit more standardised in terms of the induction, expectations, ambition. And so there's going to be a programme for directors of education starting in January, which I'm running over four sessions, so that will cascade down a lot more. Culture shift is a long process, but I feel that with some of the infrastructural things that we've done already, we've started to shift. We have started to shift. But one of the key things is speaking common language, and we talk about academic advising now, but when we started off on that work strand, there were, I think, something 18 different labels, but it was agreed pretty early on that actually academic advising is the term now. But then also another thing that we know we've got to work on is certain guides in terms of, you know, here's key pointers in terms of academic advising, here's key pointers with assessment and feedback, which is something Henry's working on, etc. So that we've got some sense of, here are the things where we can share a common framework, but then of course disciplinary differences will dictate to a certain extent different approaches. But I think that's the excitement of difference, and we should celebrate the diverse pedagogic approaches that we might have, but also celebrate when we think actually here's the co-creation piece is now non-negotiable, set in stone. This is the way we're going forward. This is a really exciting, pioneering bit that will lead us to where we want to get to.
Well, just about finished on time. There are drinks in the Colette Bow room, I believe. As Stephen said, this is the first of a series of events. We will have one specifically for students in the new year as well. It's a massive thank you to our panel, and have a good evening. Thank you.